Well, good morning. I hope your week has got off to a great start. At least it's a bit more spring-like outside, and you're out maybe enjoying things in your back garden, although still social distancing, obviously. So this morning I've got another brief devotional for you, and we're going to kick off by reading from Mark chapter 11, verse 20 through 33. So as they passed by in the morning, they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. And Peter remembered and said to him, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you cursed is withered." And Jesus answered them, "Have faith in God. Truly, I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, 'Be taken up and thrown into the sea,' and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you've received it, and it will be yours. And whenever you stand praying, forgive, if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father also, who is in heaven, may forgive you your trespasses." And they came to Jerusalem, and as he was walking in the temple, the chief priests and the scribes and the elders came to him, and they said to him, "By what authority are you doing these things? Or who gave you this authority to do them?" And Jesus said to them, "I will ask you one question. Answer me, and I will tell you by what authority I do these things. Was the baptism of John from heaven or from man? Answer me." And they discussed it with one another, saying, "Well, if we say from heaven, he will say, 'Why then did you not believe him?' But shall we say from man?" They were afraid of the people, for they all held that John really was a prophet. So they answered Jesus, "We do not know." And Jesus said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things." My first job that I had was on a plant nursery, and from time to time we were allowed to bring plants home from the nursery. Either we could buy them at a discount, or if a plant wasn't really going to make it, we could take it for free. And my mum was a keen gardener, and so I would bring her some plants. And one time I brought home this fig tree. Well, when I say fig tree, that's a bit of a misnomer. It was more of a seedling, really, and it was kind of a scrappy, scruffy, scrawny little seedling, and really didn't think it was going to do very well. But nonetheless, we had visions of figs and eating figs and that kind of stuff. And I'd like to say that it got all sorts of TLC, but it didn't really get much TLC at all. In fact, it got stuck in a pot and watered not very much. The first winter actually was encrusted in ice, and so really didn't think it was even going to survive. Anyway, I left home and didn't really think much more about the little fig plant. But 3 years later, I was having a conversation on the phone with Mum and Dad, and, "Oh, you remember that fig tree?" "Yeah." "Well, it produced figs." Well, that's amazing. I mean, again, can't really call it a tree because it was a plant, but nonetheless, that scrawny, stunted plant produced figs. Yesterday, we read in the passage yesterday that Jesus passed by a fig tree in the morning, and it was full flush. It wasn't scruffy and stunted. It was a beautiful specimen of a fig tree, lots of leaves, and he was looking for fruit, and he found no fruit, and so he cursed it. And so this next day that we just read about here, they're passing by this fig tree, and Peter remembers that Jesus cursed it, and it has withered and died. Now, the fig tree is symbolic, and Jesus is demonstrating that he has authority, and he's demonstrating the symbolic authority that he has of what he's found in the temple, that he's come to the temple looking for fruit, and he's found no fruit, and he's judged it. Later in the day, Jesus, we just read, is challenged by the authorities, and they ask him, by whose authority? Well, but what authority do you have to do these things that you're doing? And Jesus says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll tell you by what authority I'm doing them if you tell me that John's baptism. Who authorized John's baptism? Was that from above, or was that from man? And it really shows that the high chief priests and whatnot, they had a dilemma, didn't they? Because if they said, well, baptism comes from above, then Jesus is going to say, well, how come you didn't follow John then? But they're frightened if they say it's from man, because all the crowd holds that John is a prophet. And so they say, well, we don't know. And so what it shows is that they actually have no authority. They're not they make no decision. And just because someone has a badge or a title or a position or whatever it may be, does not mean that they have authority. So maybe the question is, well, where does authority come from? A few days later, Jesus had that conversation with Pontius Pilate as Jesus was brought before Pilate. And much to Pilate's exasperation, Jesus wouldn't answer him when he was questioned. And then he said, don't you know that I have the authority to release you, and I have the authority to crucify you? And Jesus told Pilate, well, you would have no authority over me if it had not been given to you from heaven above. Again, Jesus told his disciples, don't worry about those who can kill the body, but worry about him who has authority over not just your body, but over your soul as well, who can destroy both. See, just because somebody has all the finery of a fig tree doesn't mean that they meet with the ultimate approval, the ultimate authority, and that's Jesus Christ. Jesus is looking for fruit from our lives, and that fruit can only come from a life that has been submitted to Jesus in faith. Now, that might not look like much to the rest of the world. It might look like a kind of a scraggly, stunted seedling, not full flush, like the specimen fig tree that we think about. And yet, if that life, no matter how straggly it might look like, is under the authority of Jesus Christ because it has been submitted to Jesus Christ in faith, then it will produce fruit. And so through Christ, we live under God's authority. Think about how much authority God has. Does he have a little bit of authority? No, he has absolute authority over everything. And so through faith, we believe in God's authority, that he is sovereign over all things and that God can do anything that he chooses to do. And we're invited by Jesus through faith to tap into God's authority through prayer. So you don't need a badge, you don't need a title, you don't need a position, you need faith. And you tap in to the ultimate authority who created the heavens and the earth and who has ultimate judgment over all things. But Jesus says something that breaks that authority is unforgiveness. You see, our authority comes from believing and trusting in Jesus' forgiveness that he won for us on the cross. And one of the fruits that we must have is, if we believe that Jesus has won for us forgiveness at the cross, is forgiving those around us. Doubt equals unforgiveness. You see, if we haven't trusted Jesus' forgiveness for us completely, then what happens is that we're quite likely to hold on to some unforgiveness because we doubt, right? We doubt that Jesus' forgiveness is complete for us. And so we're not going to let go of a hold we have on somebody else if we don't believe that God has let go of the hold that he has on us. It comes back to faith. And Jesus says there will be a problem with our prayers, that we won't be able to tap into God's authority because of our unforgiveness, really our doubt, our unbelief. It may look like we're speaking and acting for God, but in fact we don't act in God's authority at all because we still have unforgiveness. So my question for you this morning, and maybe you want to ponder that a bit today, is what kind of fig are you? Are you full flush with the authority of the world, or a scruffy, stunted kind of a fig, but one living under the authority of God because you have put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ? And are you bearing that fruit because you understand that you have been fully forgiven by God through Jesus Christ? Or maybe you're just holding on to a little bit of unforgiveness, in which case I would just urge you today to have a think about that and ask God to help you release that so you can live in full faith and bear the fruit of forgiveness. All right. Well, have a brilliant day, and looks like it's going to be a nice one. So enjoy yourselves and bear fruit. Talk to you tomorrow.